Sure. Hi, I'm Lizz Winstead. I'm a comedian, a writer, and an activist, co-creator of The Daily Show, and founder of Abortion Access Front.
Yeah. I mean, so something that was watching through this film and and realizing, I'm like, wait, you kind of, I mean, yeah, there was George Carlin, there's the political comedians, obviously, before the 2000s, before the late 90s and 2000s, obviously. But like the idea of like bringing to mainstream television that straight up politics and comedy, which is just everything now. I mean, it's just like literally every other show. There's like a dozen different Daily Show spinoffs. And even former hosts have Daily Show spinoffs. And like, but you kind of like brought this to the mainstream. I mean, like what has that been like watching the last, couple decades?
It's pretty wild to watch the evolution, because when we launched it, it was literally said to me numerous times by network executives, you can talk about politics, but you have to be funny. You're not an activist. And I'm like, but I am an activist. But they were constantly trying to push the show in a direction that was more like a snarky Entertainment Tonight.
Yeah.
And we pushed back hard. I didn't make any friends with network executives doing that show, because it was a constant battle of what it needed to be. And had it just become another sort of snark fest shitting on celebrities, people would never have learned in a way that they do know how powerful comedy is as a tool for engagement. I mean, people knew from Carlin and Pryor and Lenny Bruce and certain people that it was, but not as relentlessly as we did it at The Daily Show.
Well, that was wild too, because I mean, like I remember that I was a Carlin fan. I was a Dennis Miller fan back in the day.
I was a Dennis Miller fan back in the day. Until
yeah, no, I mean, it's still like you re-listen to some of his stuff and you're like, oh, I see how this started. I see where this was going.
Yeah.
But you go through, like that was always, it was like digging through and trying to find live concerts of a D-level band, trying to find the pop political community other than Carlin. Basically, it was like, oh, I mean, I'm a huge Bill Hicks fan, and like trying to find his CDs back in the day was like bootlegs and things like that. And so like bringing it to the mainstream is just, it's just been, as a fan of that world and kind of in the world, it's been absolutely amazing. But like, speaking of I don't know if this is not a good segue, but we're gonna do it anyway. Like talking about people with weird hobbies. Anti-abortion protesters.
Oh my God. Do they have hobbies? I mean, I think their hobby is doing this thing of unsolicited screaming horror at people outside of clinics when they walk in to get abortions, and calling it counseling and thinking it's changed anyone's mind.
Yeah.
Dick pics and counseling are not done on spec.
Yeah.
They are by request behaviors. And so I'm like, I've never understood what that is. My favorite ones are the ones that will scream horror, 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 and then they'll have their kids with them. And then they'll have signs that say, we'll adopt your baby. So I'm like, okay, if I get this right, here's you screaming horror with your children at people saying, I'd love to take your baby so that in 3 years I can bring your baby back here and teach it to scream horror at people getting abortions. No, sir. No, I don't think so. Hard pass.
It is fascinating to watch that. And then the kind of the widespread expansion of the kind of groomer BS and talking about how anybody who brings their kid to anything that has to do with trans or gay people is grooming, and watching that and trying to compare those two. And you're like, if you think that one is if one is grooming, I don't accept it either, but like, it's kind of wild to like how that parses in people's mind.
And also, Zach, I have to say that like the thing that we have observed so profoundly, and especially because, we've been doing this now for almost 8 years. The film has followed us for 7. And watching some of these children who are now in their 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 young boys who
Yeah.
have been empowered by this patriarchal Christian set of rules, and really, I'm going to say groomed to harm women, to really shame women, and to threaten women with permission that is really profound. We have seen an escalation of violence from them. We were in Greenville earlier this year in February, South Carolina, trying to defend a clinic, and they were trying to set up ladders to look over the fence to scream at patients with a megaphone. So we decided that we would counter their narrative by taking up that space. So they couldn't set up their ladders, and they were grabbing, elbowing, shoving the ladders into our people in a way that was a taught entitlement that felt really scary.
So how do you, I guess we kind of just delved into it, but how do you bring comedy to that sort of scene? If you can just like kind of elaborate on elaborate on Abortion Action Front and kind of like what you guys do, what y'all do.
So bringing comedy is sometimes exposing that entitled bullshit. And so what we have taken to doing now is wherever they go, they've got those massive fetus porn signs. And for years, everybody would show up with their little, 18 by 24 signs that they'd hold up. And you couldn't combat, I'm pro-choice and I vote with, here's a fucking, blown up, crazy, bloody thing.
Yeah.
So we decided to make our signs as big as theirs. And what we do is tell the story of who they are with QR codes, so that when people drive by, they can hit that QR code and see a video of what they preach in their churches, of them at January 6th, of them preaching that women are shitty. So it'll say, these people believe women must obey men at all costs. And if you click on the QR code, you'll see a speech that says, I will harm a woman, a wife has to submit, there's no such thing as marital rape. Because me telling you is far less effective than me saying, don't listen to me, watch. And so that's been a really cool thing that we do. We also just like to hold up signs next to them that say like, unfuckable thug. Because it's just like true.
Yeah.
And because people forget, for a long time, we were told that ignore them and they'll go away.
Mm-hmm.
And by ignoring them, they didn't go away. They actually got elected in state legislatures and on school boards. And they've been empowered and start churches. And they got Roe v. Wade overturned because of all this ignoring. And I say there's a big difference between showcasing or amplifying and exposing. And so people are like, you're amplifying them. I'm like, no, I'm letting you know who they are. And then I'm taking that second part, which is letting you know how dangerous they are and what you can do to expose them, because those are all part of the steps, right? And we got to be doing that all the time. How do you fight a battle if you don't know what the enemy is doing, bringing, planning, and strategizing? You don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also, especially when one of these people rises up or become newsworthy, whether they literally commit a terrorist act or whether they run for office.
Speaker of the House.
Yeah. And so you suddenly, like, everybody under the sun is like doing this deep dive research into who Johnson is. stop laughing.
I
But
know Johnson Watch is very popular at abortion access.
the joke is a little on the nose. Like, that's the problem. It's just like two there. You know, it's
Mhm.
like two right there. But and you suddenly have to do that, and that's why we have to, you know, like, then we all have to do this massive amount of research. And like, because there's like 5 journalists who have the you know, the choice abortion beat, whatever you want to call it, then those 5 people are like, okay, well, we have no time to do anything else other than do interviews. But the one thing I really like about the doc is that it showcases that basically y'all aren't just basically making funny videos on the internet.
Right.
It is like the tour. Tell me about the tour that you went on.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's the biggest misconception about us, is that we're kind of just like jokers and flamethrowers. And while we are that, we also spend a lot of time out on the road, not in Portland, Oregon, but in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Huntsville, Alabama, and Oklahoma City, and every godforsaken place
Mhm.
that pre-row there maybe was one clinic left trying to survive. Our goal was, we did this massive tour where we would do a comedy and music show, and we would incorporate the local activists and the abortion providers in that town, so that it was like almost a talk show with music and comedy and conversation. And people who came to the show could learn about what's going on in their locally, what's going on in their state, and then they could sign up right in the room, so that we would help expand the activist spaces and support for the clinics in those communities. And for a lot of folks, it was the first time they'd ever even seen an abortion provider.
Yeah.
And for a lot of abortion providers on that stage, it was the first time they'd ever heard an audience cheer for them or tell them that they appreciated what they do. And then it's a two-prong thing that we do. So we do our shows, we get people excited. And then, the dirty secret about abortion provision is, and this can happen in blue states or the shitty states, but if you provide abortion care, a lot of times you can't get people to like mow your lawn or paint your exam rooms or fix your fences because you provide abortion. And sometimes if people decide to actually provide the service, anti-abortion people will follow them home, picket their work, go to their church and scream at them. And so we do a lot of that work.
Mhm.
And then we tell people in the audience that like, these folks need a landscape person, and we'll connect them with them. And it's really cool. And that feels, I guess that to me is the most rewarding thing, is to be able to connect community with these places so that we can create lasting relationships. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to be anybody's white savior. We called all of these communities and said, hey, we know you're doing good work. How can we help bring more people to learn about you? That's all we want to do, is to be able to get as many people as possible to be your support system. And sometimes doing a comedy music show can bring more people than trying to pass out flyers and get people to come to the basement of a Unitarian church or something.
Yeah.
We can offer that, because also we're all so busy and we're all trying to work on multiple fronts. And when you go to places like Oklahoma City or Tulsa, the abortion activists are also the anti-gun activists, are also the anti-racist activists that are trying to fucking fight all these fights.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah. Now, like, you go into a town like Jackson, and there's the big pink house, which is this amazing building. It definitely sticks out.
Yep.
But there's also, for almost every one of those, there's a dozen other clinics that
you say a dozen, Zach, I laugh at you.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
and
it
when
would
you
be
say
great if
other
that
clinics-
ratio was true.
Yes. And when you say other clinics, you mean these fake abortion imposter centers that might look like abortion clinics, but they're run usually by the local church.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example, in New York State, we love New York State. You can get abortion when you need one. There are 95 of these fake religious abortion clinics throughout the state. The ratio is around 3 or 4 to 1. In some states, there's no abortion clinics, and there is a ton of these fake clinics, and the state is funding them with TANF dollars, with Medicaid dollars. It's crazy. So those places are really dangerous because you don't need a license or any regulatory body to open one. The Supreme Court ruled that you can literally cosplay and put on a lab coat and tell people that if they take a bunch of pills, they can reverse their abortion. And that's perfectly fine, protected speech under the First Amendment. And I honestly am trying to wrap my head around how playing doctor is protected speech with vulnerable people's lives. It is wild, and they're permeating rapidly. And the thing that's so messed up about them, well, there's many things, but I think the thing that is becoming more messed up is they are replacing places that even provide birth control with, you walk in, they'll take your clothes, they'll give you and your phone so that you're trapped there, and put you in a hospital gown. Anybody can run a ultrasound machine. You don't have to be licensed. So now a person who is just like a volunteer is doing an ultrasound on you and lying to you about how far you are along in your pregnancy, and literally taking the choice away from you, but with this information about when and if you wanted to terminate your pregnancy, because they'll lie to you about how far along you are. It's a mess.
And the fight, because I mean, one thing that I really like about the doc is that it features the independent clinics. It features the non-funded ones. I mean, I think we all think that Planned Parenthood is like, oh, that is just the McDonald's. It's the brand. It's every if there's an abortion in America, it's Planned Parenthood. Because I mean, honestly, that's the way the right sells it. That's the way the anti-abortion people sell it as well. It's not literally one guy who's doing flights back and forth between two clinics, probably not making as much as if he just was a random primary care doctor in Alabama. If he was doing that, he could make a lot more money, but is doing it. I guess to talk about, if you can talk about that.
That's a really good question, because I think that the sort of landscape of abortion provision, that is a misnomer, right? That it's like Planned Parenthood is synonymous with all the care, and independent clinics provide over 60% of all abortion care in the country. And I'm talking about like clinics that have are just a mom and pop clinic, or these really cool holistic feminist centers that opened up. When it comes to needed abortions that happen later in pregnancy, it's independent providers that do almost 90% of those. And those are the first clinics to go, because they are oftentimes one-offs that, like you said, aren't Planned Parenthoods that have a federation and that have all this funding and all this brand recognition, and so for them to get support is gigantic. And because they are providing the lion's share of the later abortion care, when we're moving towards, because of access, people are not finding out in time. People are trying to get the money together to have their care, traveling places. In some states, the abortions after 12 weeks have gone up, like 56%. There wasn't one abortion done in the state of Indiana since July, when their abortion ban went into effect. Illinois, right next door, numbers skyrocket, right? And so if those clinics, who are the ones providing that care, are closing, where are people going? I mean, Minnesota, which is where I live half the year, 30% of the abortions they provided last year were from people from Texas. So that means that people from Texas were trying desperately to get care through that route of Oklahoma and Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa, and finally getting to Minnesota. And either there's no abortions in those states at all, or the appointments are so backed up that they can't get there. So that's sort of the landscape, right, of of what feels really scary. And I think that also just for folks to know that a lot of times those independent clinics were also the places where people were organizing and where community was happening. So when those clinics close, the community support also goes away.
Yeah.
So for us to make sure that those activists who are there still have a place to go and have enough people to meet and fight is crucial.
Yeah. I mean, the phrase, I'm trying to remember exactly what the phrase is that I continually hear from the anti-abortion folks. It's the abortion industrial complex
Oh,
when
the
they talk.
abortion industrial complex is
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Yeah. Or, they call clinics like the gates of hell, or
Yeah. Well, I just think because it implies this the numbers that they throw out, it's like, well, tens of billions of dollars are
yes.
going. And I still remember that Onion article that like they did about
Oh yeah, the abortion flex. That was so good.
and they believed it and they shared it. And like, I had people tell me about it. And I'm just like, that was but
But
it's
also we were praying for that. I know. And it's like, in a perfect world, and these are the conversations that honestly I'm so happy to have, because like when that Onion article came out, like it was really funny and stuff, and we were like, wouldn't that be great? And then we had to have conversations within our own movement about like, well, I mean, celebrating abortion. And I was like, yes, celebrating abortion, because here's the deal. We have ceded the conversation around abortion to the right for so long that we have never learned how to talk about abortion, that it's a community good, that it's a moral good, that when someone makes that decision, they've assessed their life. And often, the most people who have abortions are people with kids, 63%, right? And so they're trying to make incredible choices. And when people are like, well, I don't know, you could have made a choice not to have sex. It's like, why? Abortion is a moral choice. And so if someone has an unintended pregnancy, we need to get to a place where we can defend abortion for all of the good that it is, because if we can't defend it or say it, they win.
Well, I mean, this is one thing that again is featured in the doc, and it's conversations we've had before about the fact that using that word, I mean, you have it's controversial probably that you had in a lot of the left, not just obviously the right or whatever, but like you have a poster behind you that says abortion.
There it is. It's abortion AF.
Procedure. It's clinical, it's care, it's reproductive rights, it's and I still like having multiple conversations with you, like we're like, and like covering this world, I still abortion, like I still like lower that word when I say it. And like why is it so important to say it, and not just say it, but say it very loudly?
Well, I think it's important because if we don't say it, we can't defend it.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it's been talked about as this dirty secret. It's been talked about as though the only way that we can talk are in terms of sort of child tragedy abortions, as though there's sort of good abortions and then there's bad abortions, but nobody wants one. And it's like, everyone who has an abortion wants it and is very happy they could have that abortion, even if they have feelings of, sadness or grief, or even regret. There was a 5-year study done that followed people who'd had abortions, thousands of people. Like, this is a very comprehensive study called the Turnaway Study. And what they found was even people who felt all of those emotions that I just cited, the number one thing they felt was relief. And the number two thing they said was that they knew it was the right choice for them to make. And so the reframing of it, and even for years, we just kind of elected politicians who would beat back anti-abortion laws. But now we need people who will not only beat back laws, but have proactive legislation to expand access, right? And so it's crucial that we can all come together. And I think that one of the most exciting things that we're seeing with these ballot initiatives and with its regular citizens who are leading the charge on these movements and saying, I'm ready to tell my story. It is nobody's business. My life is better because of my access to reproductive care.
Yeah.
And they keep winning, and they keep winning because more people than not fundamentally understand what abortion is.
Mhm.
And it's just a lot of really loud assholes who are trying to define what it isn't. I mean, you hear Tommy Tuberville and all these people being like, you know what? These people want to have post-birth abortions. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's murder. Post-birth abortion, that's called murder in every society.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. What
Yeah.
are you even blabbing about?
Yeah. It's I was just trying to remember the last time we talked officially, like for an interview, and I think it was for the Probe Awards, and it was obviously post Roe. um and like the entire conversation, I remember talking to like tons of journalists, like other activists who I'm not very much in this world, especially anymore. Like, but like people were just like, well, they'll never know. It's a useful cudgel. They'll always keep Roe a thing. And I don't know. I never had a thought in my mind, never a single thought that it wouldn't. And neither did, I don't think that if they got the opportunity to take it down, they would. And I think a lot of people thought that was once that's down, oh, well, then they'll settle down. Like, do you see, you have a like quote at the start of the film, our movement has watched abortion erode since 1973. Like,
Yeah,
do you think that people like in general really understand on how bad it is?
I don't. And I think that that's part of where we're at. And I think that it's a two-pronged problem. The right knows everything that's going on. They say abortion 4 times more than our side. Our side can have hubris about things. They talk about abortion in the horse race. They talk about abortion in political terms, how it will affect parties. They never talk to human beings. They never talk to people that provide it. They never talk to people who have them. And we don't talk about abortion. So people don't know, they don't even understand. Like, we didn't even vote in midterm elections until 2006, right? Like when we got that shellacking and we lost the House, it was after that we had a reckoning, right? And people sort of started finally understanding that state legislatures are the ones that are really making abortion policy. We don't have Roe because some fuckwad in Mississippi decided that they wanted to have a 15-week ban that turned into a whole upending and took it through that Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the most conservative one in the nation, which, if you'll notice, why so many abortion laws go through Louisiana and Mississippi and Texas, it's because it goes through that circuit. It's a pipeline to the Supreme Court, right? So now that people are learning that more, I think that it's slowly coming out. But part of the bummer in all of it is that the media only reports when it's sexy and tragic. Because they haven't followed it forever, they don't even know how to talk about it. So they're using the language handed them by the right. And people like me, who have a lot of historical knowledge on a lot of different stuff, could be really helpful, but they don't ask us things. I mean, the connection to J6 alone and anti-abortion extremists, it's us, the clown comedians who've been traveling around, who identified a lot of those people and have seen them in communion with the Proud Boys and like so many of these organizations, the 3%ers, and people don't even know how the intersections of those people are really profound.
Now, I try to end. Is there a reason for hope? I know it's such the BS. I always hate that, like, very generic.
I know. Yes, there is a reason for hope, and why I say that is we ourselves have watched Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, all these people passing citizen initiatives on their own, right? We have seen time and time again that now people won't be fooled. People aren't, hopefully, by our work coming out of the shadows and talking about it. And like, it used to be 30 years ago, people would say, oh, don't tell your abortion story, you'll never get work again. Don't be political, you'll never get work again. Guess what? I'm here every single day. I'm on TV. I'm on shows. My comedy shows are great. I have asshole protesters. You know what that does? It helps people learn that they're everywhere and they're ridiculous. So my hope is that people are really understanding and seeing, and also understanding that you get the government you fight for, so you can't just sit back anymore.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm most proud of at Abortion Access Front is, as we've watched time and time again, people just marching and then feeling like, I want to march and do something else. We decided to create an entire program called Operation Save Abortion that has so many ways that we can connect people with their local people and meet them where they are. We don't expect everyone to be us, but if you can identify what your skill set is, how much time you have, what your capacities are, we can hook you up to make real change at the place that you are at, and we'll meet you there. And that feels really exciting to me.
Awesome.
Is that hopeful?
Yes.